News. We're live on Joy 99.7 FM here in Accra. In Kumasi, it's on Love 99.5 FM. We're on a number of affiliates across Ghana's 16 regions. We're on Sankara FM in Yendi, Radio Somali in Wakastle FM in Cape Coast, Jubilee Radio in Keta. We're also on Dreams FM in Bolgatanga and Kaleo FM in Akachi. We're live on Facebook. We're on Twitter Spaces and myjoyonline.com. The Midday News is sponsored by Petrosol. Your clean fuel in full quantity. Petrosol is always a delightful experience. Also brought to you by Duraplus Ghana Limited, producers of quality PVC pipes and water tank. Where Duraplus goes, water flows. This afternoon, the International Monetary Fund says Ghana's current economic crisis will only be resolved if government is able to stick to the reforms and conditions spelled out in the $3 billion support program.
If implemented as planned, this program will really help us not only dealing with the crisis, but get out of the crisis and really lay the foundation, which is exactly what you are talking about.
It meanwhile says the conclusion of Ghana's external debt restructuring will not mean the nation will regain access to the international markets. We'll tell you why. Also silence in courtrooms and many stranded clients at court premises across the country as the judicial service staff boycott work over delayed salary adjustment.
Completely frustrated because now you don't even know when your case is coming on. Some of us have dates for trial.
In my case, for example, I have to travel, but because of the case, I'm here.
Also this afternoon, GMPC board chairman Freddie Blair describes calls for him to be sacked as unfortunate as he argues Ghana's interest in its oil fields are not packs of cigarette he can keep in his pockets and sell without due process.
We are not selling. I kept on stressing that we are not selling. That it is 7% that we all were struggling to have. We wanted it, and we even thought that we have had it with our hands. And they insisted, no, they are also interested.
Also, condition of 5-month-old baby battling cerebral palsy in the Nadoli Kaleo district of the Upper West region deteriorating after a native doctor denied him food for 3 days.
I am appealing for help in any form to cure my baby. I am told that such medical conditions, if not properly handled, may lead to the baby having mental challenges in future. So I need everybody's help.
We have details of that in sports.
A former Black Stars player has ruled himself out of the upcoming GFA elections.
And much later, Electricity Company of Ghana begins operation of cashless system in Volta and Ashanti regions.
Customers can now transact business with ECG remotely, i.e. anywhere and anytime.
We have that and more in this afternoon's edition of the Midday News. I am Emefa Apao. Please stay on for details. Many thanks for choosing us. We are your home of independent, fearless and credible journalism. And in our very first story for this package, International Monetary Fund says Ghana's current economic crisis will only be resolved if government is able to stick to the reforms and conditions spelled out in the $3 billion support program. The nation has already received at least $600 million, with government indicating it will be using the money to shore up the Bank of Ghana's reserves and budgetary support. There are, however, concerns about whether the program would take Ghana out of the current economic challenges. Resident Representative Dr. Leandro Medina is confident an effective implementation can achieve this.
This program is very strong on really the objectives and the policies and reforms that are needed. So again, if implemented as planned, this program will really help us not only dealing with the crisis, but get out of the crisis and really lay the foundation, which is exactly what you are talking about, right? Doing the transformation, so then you can have a more sustainable and long-lasting inclusive growth. You know, ensuring social protection is a key aspect of the program. Let me be clear. In times of crisis, it's not uncommon that the expenditure as a whole is reviewed, and the different initiatives are being reviewed to make them more cost efficient. So this is what it's going into that.
How that donor is going to come on board to
The extended credit facility, as I mentioned, is a program to support, financially support the needs of countries in difficulty. And one very important dimension of this type of program is the role as the catalytic role in securing foreign aid and foreign financing. In this sense, the role of donors, of development partners and other multilaterals is very key, and we really expect them to come on board, and some of them that are already working on the different initiatives that they have.
The external creditors negotiations and all the rest. I mean, some are saying that it remains very critical to the success of this program and even passing some of the program reviews.
As I said before, this is a comprehensive debt operation that includes different types of creditors, right? It includes the domestic debt, it includes the external bilateral, and it includes the external commercial. What I can say, the domestic front has been largely concluded. The external front, which is, I think, what you referred to, it has two components, right? The bilateral and the commercial. On the bilateral front, we have received assurances in the context of the G20 Common Framework, right? The official creditor committee was formed and co-chaired by China and France have provided the assurances. So that is very promising. On the commercial front, the authorities are discussing with their creditors, and also progress is being made, and we expect also,
That's the IMF's resident representative, Dr. Leandro Medina, there in that interview that will air this evening on PM Express Business Edition with George Riafi. You want to catch it at 9 p.m. on the Joy News channel and all our social media platforms as well. Well, the IMF, meanwhile, says a successful conclusion of Ghana's external debt restructuring will not grant the nation automatic access to the international market. Ghana has, in the last couple of months, been unable to borrow from the international market due to debts reaching unsustainable levels, with lenders unwilling to do business with the nation. President Akufo-Addo yesterday indicated Ghana will attempt to assess the market yet again.
To position us to be able to go back into the international capital market, which had been a source of funding for us for the first 3 or 4 years of our government.
Do you see that happening soon? Because I know your finance minister said there's no rush to get back.
There's no rush to get back, but nevertheless, obviously, why not? Can we not take advantage of global savings? It makes a lot of sense to be able to do that. And the sooner we can do it, better. I think that what the finance minister means is that we're going to try as much as possible to maintain the discipline which is required, which is the most important prerequisite of a successful program.
Right.
And that would mean ramping up our own domestic savings, being able to put systematic controls over public expenditure to make sure that we're always cutting our coat according to our cloth.
Well, that's President Akufo-Addo. Well, this may not come easy. We know that the IMF in its country report is already pointing to some challenges, and my colleague Joseph Akable joins me in studio with more from that report. So, Joseph, what does the IMF have to say about access to the international market in particular?
So that part of the report reads, risks to regaining sufficient market access are also very high. Successful implementation of the authorities' debt restructuring strategy is not by itself sufficient to regain market access. There is also the need to restore market confidence in the sustainability of Ghana's economic policies, which requires significant fiscal adjustment amid political challenges. High prospective debt service to the fund after the end of the program may itself make it more difficult to regain market access. Strong program commitment and ownership by authorities and continuous engagement with them and their advisors before and following the approval of the program could help mitigate these risks.
Okay, thank you very much. That's Joseph Akable. Let me take you to the court complex now, and there's dead silence there as the nationwide strike by the judicial service staff gets underway. Some clients who visited the court this morning have all been left stranded after meeting empty courtrooms. The workers are protesting delays in the adjustment of their salaries. We'll hear from one of the frustrated persons shortly, but my colleague James Aveji has been to the court complex in Accra and joins me in studio with details photos of what he found on the ground. Let's talk about the mood from the court complex where you visited.
So, MFA, we've been to the Accra court complex and nothing actually is happening. On a normal day, you could see cars moving in and out, people moving in and out of the court complex, either to appear in court or come to file a case or follow up on a case they have filed previously, but nothing is happening. We've been speaking to some of these persons who have been giving us their frustration on the happenings at the court today.
We are frustrated, completely frustrated, because now you don't even know when your case is coming on. Some of us have dates for trial, subsequent days, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 days continually for trial, and you don't know when again your turn will come. It's very, very frustrating.
They have to resolve those issues, because if they don't do that, there are a lot of cases which they need to be settled. In my case, for example, I have to travel, but because of the case, I'm here. So if it's not resolved, then it means we are piling up the cases, and it's going to be a problem for some people.
Well, so that's an interaction my colleague James Aveji had. The situation is not different in other parts of the country, we are told. Nana Boachi Yadom joins us from the Ashanti region. And now, let's talk about the situation in the Ashanti region. How does it look like? Well, Nana Boachi Yadom is here to join us, but let's head to the northern region, and Martina Bugri joins us on the line with the situation in the northern region. Martina, how are those seeking court services in Tamale coping with the absence of the judicial staff?
When you go to the court here, everywhere is very quiet. At the High Court, they've closed it from the main entrance, and so the security are stationed. Anyone who comes in, they give you the reason why they have locked up the place. And as we speak, the officers are locked, and it's, I would say, 100% compliance. Nobody is in the building. I met some few people who had come. One had come from Saboba, Wapuli in the Saboba district to file a case. And then when he came, he was told that they were on strike. He looked very disappointed because he's looking at having to travel back to his area. And he says that the case is an urgent case because it involves chieftaincy and also land.
Well, so that's the situation in Tamale where my colleague Martina Buguri is reporting from. I'll take you back to the Ashanti region, and Nabuachi Yadom is checking what the situation is in some courts that he visited. And I'll paint a picture of the situation where you visited to us.
All right, so MFA, we visited the Kumasi High Court, and then we've been to the Court of Appeal. We found out that some of the court users are really stranded, and they have been to the court for quite some time. Some came from afar, some from the Pai, others from Obuasi, and even some from the Western region who came to seek redress, some also coming for their ruling. But unfortunately, they could not get access to the various court rooms. Even lawyers and judges are not getting access to the court complexes that we visited. We spoke to the president of the Ghana Bar Association, and he said government must intervene in order not to see any disturbances. So this is what we've been taking from these places that we've visited so far.
Well, so that's the situation in the Ashanti region. Well, Martina Bugri has been interacting with the clients as well. Listen to their frustration.
I've come all along to file a case. And when I came, the place is all locked, that they are on strike. And the strike is that they are not paying the allowances. And because of the allowances that they are on strike. So I just want to appeal to government to see to it that they get the allowances.
Well, the General Secretary of JUSAC, Abdullahi Yakubu, says the group will only call off the strike if government assents to their demands.
So it doesn't have to be the judicial, the third arm of government that should cover when government claims that they have economic issues. This is what it will take. If the President of the Republic of Ghana brings us the approval, and we see that approval fully signed by him, and the Finance Minister also commits to forwarding same to the Control Accountant General to pay us the new salaries with all the arrears from January up to the date of approval, we will call off the strike and report to work immediately.
That's a Jusak there. Away from the court, and GNPC board chairman Freddie Blair has described calls for him to be sacked as unfortunate. He argues Ghana's interest in its oil fields are not packs of cigarette he can keep in his pockets and sell without due process. 29 civil society organizations have this week demanded his sacking after it emerged he had written to offer portions of Ghana's oil fields to South African oil giant PetroSA.
We demand the immediate removal of GNPC CEO Opoku Ahwenea Dankwa and the board chairman Freddie W. Blair from their respective positions, as they have become a threat to Ghana's interest in the petroleum sector. 6. Additionally, we demand the immediate transfer of JOHL and all its assets from Cayman Island and other jurisdictions to GNPC.
You had there the representative of the 29 CSOs, that's the team lead for ACT Africa, Abdul Karim Mohammed. But we can now hear from Mr. Freddie Blair, who's been responding to the issues of the sidelines of the commissioning of a 7-unit classroom block built for Krobo Girls Senior High School by the GNPC Foundation.
We are not selling. I kept on stressing that we are not selling. That it is 10%, the 7% that we all were struggling to have. We wanted it, and we even thought that we have had it, what our hands. And they insisted, no, they are also interested. There's definitely a disagreement over it. And it started 2021. They still knocked our doors. Indeed, let me admit before you, the media, that the minister had already told me that, no, we will not do that. And says, well, it is a difficult situation. In that case, deal with the minister, your counterpart in South Africa. And why I deal with the South African chairman and so forth over it, so that it's an American. Because after all, we are all shareholders of the DWT share structure of the oil. Now, over several months, it's not happened. So I proposed that in that case, instead of them going, they said, they were telling me they were going for arbitration. And I proposed to them that please, instead of going, let's talk about it. But 7%, let's say 50-50, 3.5. And that if we even decide on that, the minister will have to either approve of it or not. How much would I'd say, what is the next thing to do? I'd say, we are talking about it. I wish the media will appreciate it from that.
So that's Freddie Blair there speaking earlier. But he has a statement also, and my colleague Kofi J. Minta joins me in studio, gives further background. Let's talk to it.
Right, so it says in 2021, the offshore holding company incorporated a new company that is Jubilee Oil Holding Limited in Cayman Island. And, you know, another assigned the Jubilee Oil Holding a 7% participation interest in the tunnel contract area and a 5.95% interest in the Deepwater Tunnel Petrol Agreement. It also entered into a sale and purchase agreement with Cosmo Energy for the sale of Anadako and with the GNPC for the sale of the Jubilee Oil Holding. So post the acquisition of the Jubilee Oil holding by GNPC after serving a notice to the preempt right to purchase the 7% participation interest in the DWT JOA currently held by the Jubilee Oil Holding. PetroSA has since engaged GNPC to acquire the said interest. So as a compromise solution, we have proposed the opposition of a 50-50 split of the 7% share GNPC was holding. It is important to note that we have yet to outline specifics for the finality on the matter, and this compromise is subject to the confirmation and subsequent advice of the minister. We are still in the stage of ongoing discussions, MFA.
And what's the point about the cigarettes and sale of shares he talks about?
Well, so he says the share of a company are not a pack of cigarettes that anyone, for that matter, the chairman of GNPC can keep in his pocket or her pocket and then by the streets. The allegations surrounding the supposed surreptitious, clandestine and scandalous sale of so-called GNPC shares are unequivocally false.
Okay, thank you very much. That's Kofi J. Minta taking us through that statement there. But this afternoon, international students, including Ghanaians, are targets of the latest wave of immigration crackdown by the UK government. Latest figures released Thursday morning show a net migration of over 600,000 people since June last year, with a significant number covered under study visas. To curtail these numbers, the UK government is rolling out a raft of new measures which will limit the issuance of visas to foreign students and their dependents beginning January 2024. Later we'll get to hear from the UK's Immigration Minister Robert Jenrick. So what is included in this particular package? Let me take you to London and speak to correspondent Manuel Cranting, who is following the story for us. So Manuel, what are the exact details of these new measures and what has been the reaction of the Ghanaian student community in the UK?
So, the package really contains a raft of new measures, chiefly including the removal of the right for international students to bring dependents unless they are taking a research or PhD program. Also, they're removing the right of international students to switch out of the Tier 4 student visa route to the Tier 2 work visa route before the completion of their studies. Now, prior to these introductions, international students who were coming to the UK to study could bring a spouse and their children under 18 years old. Starting January 2024, that would be scrapped, and so international students would be only allowed to come here alone if they are studying in a program that runs for just a year. And this is born out of the fact that, 16,000 from a number of 16,000 dependent visas that were issued in 2019. The latest figures are reporting 136,000, nearly 9 times of the dependent visas which were issued just some 3 years ago, MFA.
And this policy, Manuel, doesn't appear to enjoy unanimous support even in the UK. How's that?
Indeed, MFA, somewhere in Scotland, for instance, the SNP has been agitating some of its MPs. For instance, the Member of Parliament for Glasgow Northwest, Carol Monaghan, she's been asking and in fact accusing the Tory party of targeting international students. We can listen to her.
International students enrich our society and they have skills which are proving ever more vital in this post-Brexit climate, which has seen the UK deprived of workers across key sectors. So with current labour shortages in healthcare, STEM, IT, to name but a few, how can the Minister fail to recognise that this policy will simply exacerbate these? This policy is launching an attack on migrants regardless of the benefits they bring to the UK. And in pursuing this short-sighted reactionary programme, international students are being caught in the crossfire.
Well, that's the situation in the UK. Many thanks to my colleague Manuel Cranting for joining us live. Taking us on a quick break here on the Midday News. Is live on Joy 99.7 FM here in Accra, in Kumasi on Love 99.5 FM. We are live on Twitter Spaces, we are on Facebook, and a number of affiliates dotted across Ghana's 16 regions. The Midday News is sponsored by Petrosol, your clean fuel in full quantity. Petrosol is always a delightful experience. Also brought to you by Duraplus Ghana Limited, producers of quality PVC pipes and water tank, where Duraplus goes, water flows. We've been hearing from the IMF, which says Ghana's current economic crisis will only be resolved if government is able to stick to the reforms and conditions spelled out in the $3 billion support program. We return from the break with sports and then the condition of 5-month-old baby battling cerebral palsy in the Nadoli Kaleo district of the Upper West region, deteriorating after a native doctor denied him food for 3 days.
I am appealing for help in any form to cure my baby. I am told that such medical conditions, if not properly handled, may lead to the baby having mental challenges in the future. So I need everybody's help.
Many thanks for staying with us. Let's do sports.
Thank you very much, MFA. Now, former Black Stars midfielder Yusuf Chipsa is currently not interested in becoming president of the Ghana Football Association. There have been calls for a former player to lead the football governing body for the first time in 20 years. The GFA presidential seat will be contested for in October this year as President Keto Kreku's first term in office comes to an end. Yusuf admits the possibility of leading the FA in the future. However, he has his focus elsewhere at the moment.
You never know tomorrow. So whenever my instincts or my body tells me there is time for this, why not? But for now, I'm focused.
On something? What is that thing?
With the PFAG.
Okay.
And I'm a licensed agent. I'm focused with what I do now. I have a group of young players under me. These young guys have entrusted their career into my hands. It's a huge responsibility. I have to make sure I don't abuse that. I have to make sure I do a good job so that tomorrow when they become somebody, they'll be able to mention my name as some of the players already do now. So that is what I'm really focused on now.
So that's former Black Stars and Asante Kotoko midfielder Yusuf Chipsa.
Thank you very much, Mubarak. Now, baby Kelvin was born 5 months ago and after a week developed cerebral palsy with seizures. He was, however, labeled a spirit child by community members and not expected to survive. His parents took him to a native doctor for consultation and treatment at Yuziri in the Nadoli Kaleo district. My colleague, Rafiq Salam, has more.
Sitting by the bedside of baby Kelvin is his mother, Imelda Kele, who is sad and crestfallen about the turn of events.
I was
told that I may have made sarcastic comments or looked down on an elderly person, and he's the one pulling the strings on the baby. The other thing is that baby Kelvin may have been a spirit child, and for that matter, may not survive. I was then asked to bring the baby to my home village at Yizere for the native doctor to exorcise the ghosts and spirits on him. We were told that if he is spirited child and takes the medicine, he will die. But if he doesn't, he will be cured and will survive. They gave him the medicine, after which we left.
She left baby Kelvin in the care of some unknown women and the native doctor. 5 days later, they were called to Wiziri to take baby Kelvin home. They were not charged a single penny. They, however, met him in worse condition.
He was frail, pale, and weak. His back dotted with sores. His body temperature also rose. We were told he was neither given food nor water, except medicine they gave him.
What is what we call pressure sores. Because they occur around the bony prominences when you are left lying in one position for a long time.
Now, the Electricity Company of Ghana has commenced the operation of its cashless system in the Volta and OT regions. This means that customers across the regions would have to pay for power or any other transaction through the ECG Power Up. There's more in this report.
As part of efforts to digitalize the Electricity Company of Ghana's operations to ensure efficient delivery of services to customers, a cashless system was introduced. Following this, transactions such as payment of bills and purchasing prepaid credit would be made through the ECG Power App. Customers who do not own smartphones are encouraged to access the system through shortcode *226#. The Volta Regional ECG Public Relations Officer, Benjamin Entry, explained that the ECG Power App has been enhanced to enable it to work efficiently.
Customers can now transact business with ECG remotely, i.e. anywhere and anytime. So with the ECG Power App, customers with smartphones can download the ECG Power App from Google Play Store or App Store and then follow the prompts. Customers without smartphones can also dial the shortcode *226# and then follow the prompt.
Now, President Akufo-Addo has tasked leaders on the continent to stop over-relying on exports and trade amongst themselves to ensure capacity building, increased earning and sustainable growth on the continent. Opening the African Leadership Forum in the national capital, Accra, a while ago on AU Day, the president explained unless this is done, the continent will continue to battle issues such as poverty, inflation and unemployment.
Africa accounts for only 3% of global trade. And intra-African trade is one of the lowest of any region globally. This is largely due to the colonial economic model, characterized by small individual economies, fragmented and disconnected regional markets, over-reliance on the production and export of primary commodities, and the presence of low productive capacities, which have been in existence for the last century. Indeed, for a continent in possession of a third of the world's arable land, the potential to create prosperity for our peoples through agriculture is immense. With 50% of our peoples engaged in this sector, the World Economic Forum tells us, and I quote, agriculture has exceptional potential for increasing intra-African trade.
And just before we go, tributes continue to pouring for global music icon Tina Turner, who died last night at age 83. Her spokesperson said Tina Turner, the queen of rock and roll, died peacefully at the age of 83 after a long illness in her home near Zurich. Well, this is how a reporter captured her trip to Ghana.
When America's most soulful performers arrive in the land of the roots, Africa, everything happens, and the experience becomes a major motion picture event. Song to song, soul to soul. This is where it all came from, where the rhythm will turn you on. A human experience you gotta share.
Definitely, and that's how we end today's edition of the Midday News. So if you didn't know, she was in Ghana in 1971 when she headlined the famous 15-hour Soul to Soul concert. You can check it out on our social media platforms. There's more when you log on to myjoyonline.com. I am Emefa Apau. There's more on myjoyonline.com. We have Living Word with Pastor